Usually when you walk into an escape room, the premise is, well, it's incredibly obvious. The door locks behind you with that loud, dramatic click.
Right. You hear the click.
Yeah, exactly. And the timer starts ticking down on this big digital clock in the corner, usually glowing red or something.
Yeah, always red.
Right. And you know exactly what you're supposed to do. You scour the room, you look under rugs for hidden keys, you decipher those weird ultraviolet symbols on the wall, and you just try to piece it all together to get out before the buzzer goes off. It's a game, and you're highly aware that you're playing it.
Exactly. The boundaries are just clearly drawn for you. The rules, even if you have to figure them out on the fly, they're contained entirely within those four walls. It's a completely isolated, manufactured experience that's, designed to be solved.
But imagine a giant invisible escape room.
Yeah.
Like one that you never actively chose to walk into.
Right.
There's no countdown clock on the wall, there's no game master watching you through a security camera, and there's no obvious locked door holding you inside. Yet, you are trapped inside it every single day.
That's a really intense way to put it.
Well, think about it. In this escape room, the clues aren't hidden inside hollowed-out books or behind fake paintings. The clues are literally everywhere you look. They are the price of a gallon of milk at the grocery store.
Wow, yeah.
They're the wage you're offered at a Tuesday afternoon job interview. They are the dense fine print on page 12 of your apartment lease. Every price tag, every contract, every subtle negotiation is a clue, a weapon, or a warning.
I mean, that is a brilliant way to visualize it because, well, we are all inside that room right now. It's the economy.
Right.
And it's funny because usually when we think about economics, we picture something incredibly dry.
Oh, totally. We think about boring charts, abstract math, supply and demand curves intersecting on a chalkboard, stuff that feels completely disconnected from the visceral reality of our actual lives.
Like a textbook you were forced to read in college and just immediately forgot.
Exactly. But the source material we're looking at today, this massive stack of notes on game theory from Kenny, it completely throws that textbook out the window.
It really does. It's a total reframing.
Right. So the mission of today's deep dive is to look at the economy not as a math problem, but as this hidden game happening inside every single interaction.
Yeah.
We're going to look at everyday life. Buying a used car, renting an apartment, deciding whether to trust a coworker. We're looking at all of it as a highly strategic board game where everyone is making moves under conditions of intense scarcity.
And what makes this specific lens, this Kenny lens, so compelling to me is that Kenny isn't just looking at this as a player trying to win the game.
Right. He's not giving out cheat codes.
Exactly. He isn't giving you a cheat code to get rich quick. He's looking at the system as an architect.
Yeah.
The core question we're going to explore for you today isn't the standard Wall Street question of, what is the most profitable move?
Or how do I maximize my own return at all costs?
Right. Instead, Kenny's approach asks a structural question. It asks, what behavior does this specific set of rules reward, punish, hide, normalize, and ultimately repeat?
So before we can figure out how to play this invisible game, or even how to redesign it, we need to understand the most basic pieces on the board.
Foundational blocks.
Yeah. And in any economic system, the most fundamental piece is a price. I think most of us just look at a price as, well, the cost of a thing. You want a coffee, the sign says $4.
You hand over the $4, you get the coffee. Transaction complete, end of story.
Right. But this framework argues that a price is doing so much more heavy lifting than that.
Oh, it absolutely is. In this framework, prices are visible receipts of a massive, hidden system. They are strategic signals.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Let's really break down the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
When a price is rising, it isn't just a random mathematical output or, a company arbitrarily deciding to be greedy.
Although it often feels like that.
It does feel like that.
Yeah.
But that rising price is actually screaming a signal across the entire global market. It's saying this resource is incredibly scarce right now, demand is overwhelming our supply, and somebody like anybody needs to figure out how to make more of this immediately.
So it acts as a decentralized megaphone.
Yes, exactly.
So it's essentially an incentive mechanism broadcast to the world, like a higher wage for a specialized type of engineer screams to college students, major in this, we need you.
Right.
Or a higher price for lithium screams to mining companies, go find more of this, the electric vehicles need it. The price is the communication network.
Exactly. But it goes beyond just signaling scarcity. Prices are also deployed as weapons and promises.
Wait, weapons.
Yes, think about a slashed price. If a massive multinational retail chain moves into a small independent town and slashes the price of their power tools to 50% below what it actually costs to manufacture them.
That's not a signal of efficiency.
No, absolutely not. That is a predatory weapon.
Because they're intentionally losing money on every single drill they sell.
Yes. It's a strategic move designed specifically to bleed the local independent hardware store dry.
Oh, wow.
Because the local store can't afford to take a loss on every sale, so eventually they just close their doors.
Then what happens the day after the local competitor goes bankrupt?
The massive retail chain immediately raises their prices back up,
Yeah.
often higher than before, because now they own the territory.
Right. They're the only game in town.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side of that, a premium price can be a promise.
Okay, how so?
Well, a luxury brand charges $10,000 for a handbag, not because the leather and stitching mathematically cost $10,000 to produce, but to signal status, exclusivity, and quality.
The exorbitant price is the promise that you're standing out from the crowd.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Because aren't some prices just arbitrary? Like, think about surge pricing on an app.
Oh, that's a great example.
You know, you're standing in the pouring rain, you just got out of a crowded concert, your feet are freezing, and suddenly a ride home that usually costs $10 is $50. Is that really a beautiful, elegant, strategic signal of scarcity, or is that just the platform squeezing me for every penny because they know I'm stuck?
It is absolutely squeezing you, but that squeeze is the signal.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it brings us to one of the most critical concepts here, which is leverage and power markers. You're entirely right that surge pricing isn't some warm, benevolent communication.
Definitely doesn't feel benevolent.
No, it communicates a very cold mathematical reality. It says, I have options, you do not.
Wow. So the algorithm is essentially pricing in my desperation.
Precisely. When you're standing in the rain at midnight, the platform's algorithm knows your outside options are terrible. You aren't going to walk 10 miles in a thunderstorm.
No, definitely not.
And you can't hail a taxi because there are none around. They have all the leverage. So the price tag of $50 is a power marker. It perfectly encapsulates Kenny's view that markets are just structured decision-making under scarcity and uncertainty.
If I'm hearing you right, when my phone shows me that $50 fee, it's essentially gloating. It's the system saying, we both know you're trapped in this corner of the escape room and I'm charging you for the key.
It is a pure manifestation of the power dynamic in that exact microsecond.
All right.
Because the platform has the historical data, they control the routing algorithm, they know exactly how many drivers are nearby, and they own the territory of that transaction. You are just a player with a drained phone battery and soaked shoes.
Yeah, I have no leverage.
Exactly. You have no leverage.
That makes me think about rent. If you're listening to this, think about the last time your rent went up. You get that dreaded envelope slipped under your door or that automated email from your property management company.
It's the worst feeling.
It really is. It says your rent is increasing by $200 a month. According to this game theory framework, that wasn't just a number updating in a spreadsheet based on national inflation metrics.
No, not at all.
It was the landlord explicitly playing a card on the board, a card that says, I know you don't want the hassle of moving. I know packing a U-Haul is awful. I know changing your address on all your accounts is an absolute nightmare.
They're pricing that in.
Right. They are putting a dollar value on your reluctance to leave, and they are billing you for it.
The landlord is calculating the friction of your exit. If your personal cost of moving, financially paying for movers, physically lifting boxes, emotionally dealing with the stress.
Sheer exhaustion of it.
Exactly. If all of that is higher than the $2,400 a year they are demanding, you will grit your teeth, sign the lease, and pay the increase.
They're probing your boundaries. That is the hidden game inside the price.
It radically changes how you view a transaction, doesn't it?
It really does. It makes you realize you're never just a passive consumer walking down an aisle. You are a piece actively being played on a board.
Right.
So now that we understand that prices are the moves we make, let's look at the physical board itself. How is this invisible escape room actually constructed? Kenny's notes map out the economy using what he calls 7 load-bearing beams.
And understanding the physics of those beams is how we transition from just angrily reacting to prices to actually understanding the architecture of the game.
Okay, so if we use the escape room analogy...
Or maybe even better.
Yeah.
Imagine a massive tower of Jenga blocks.
Oh, I like that.
The entire economy is this towering structure, and it's held together by these 7 forces.
Let's talk about the physics of that Jenga tower. Who is pulling the blocks?
That brings us to the first beam, the players. Who is actually at the table? In a textbook, it's just buyers and sellers.
Right.
But in reality, the players are massive corporate firms, individual workers, labor unions, government regulators, insurance conglomerates, local landlords. But crucially, Kenny's lens insists that we must map out the hidden players.
The hidden players, right? The people who aren't making the transaction but are shaping the gravity of the room it happens in, like the software engineers writing the pricing algorithm, the auditors checking the books. But there's a specific type of hidden player in the notes that really blew my mind. Kenny says we have to include future players.
Yes, people who are completely invisible right now because they haven't been born yet or haven't entered the workforce yet.
Wow.
Future taxpayers, future generations who are not in the boardroom, who have absolutely zero voice in the current negotiation, but who will absolutely inherit the systemic consequences of whatever deal is struck today.
It's like playing that game of Jenga, and you and I are taking turns pulling blocks out of the bottom of the tower. We are competing fiercely to see who can extract the most blocks and build our own little pile of wealth without knocking the whole thing over. But the terrifying part is that the Jenga tower we're hollowing out is the exact same tower that our grandchildren are going to have to live inside. I might win our little game today by pulling out a massive block, but I am leaving them a structurally compromised, incredibly fragile environment.
What's fascinating here is that that captures Kenny's later days model perfectly. He acts as the logistics of the game.
What does that mean, practically?
Well, a normal economic analysis might look at a company dumping waste into a river to save money and just applaud the short-term quarterly profit. They won the Jenga turn.
Right, they got the block.
But Kenny's lens flags it as systemic degradation. He evaluates every single move by asking, does this move improve the resilience of the system? Does it merely exploit the system? Or does it quietly rot the foundation?
So if the players are the ones pulling the blocks, what are the other beams holding the tower together?
The second is goals. What is everyone actually optimizing for? We lazily assume everyone just wants to maximize money.
Which is usually false.
Very false.
Yep.
And if you assume that, you will fundamentally misread your opponent's strategy. Players might be optimizing for sheer survival, for social status, for market share, or for long-term legacy.
Right.
A CEO trying to artificially pump the stock price before they retire in 6 months has a radically different goal than a family business owner trying to build a reputation that lasts 4 generations.
That makes total sense. I mean, think about a highly skilled worker who takes a job that pays 20% less simply because it offers a guaranteed pension, incredible health insurance, or just a 10-minute commute instead of an hour.
Exactly.
An old-school economist might look at them and say, you are behaving irrationally. You left money on the table. But they aren't irrational at all. They're just optimizing for a different payoff, time and security.
Precisely. The third beam is choices, which are the actual mechanics of the moves they can make. Can they strike? Can they bid? Can they legally hide information? The fourth is incentives, which is the engine driving the behavior, what the system actually rewards. The fifth is constraints, the boundaries of the game, like extreme scarcity, legal limits, and the ultimate constraint, time.
Right. Time is always running out.
Always. The sixth is equilibrium, which is the pattern the game settles into when everyone is exhausted. And finally, the seventh, and perhaps the most vital load-bearing beam, is information. Who knows what?
The notes really highlight information as the ultimate battlefield, because if you don't know the true state of the board, you cannot possibly play the game effectively. You are basically pulling Jenga blocks blindfolded.
Information is everything. In introductory economics, they teach this utopian concept called perfect information.
Right, where everybody knows everything.
Yeah, where every buyer and every seller magically knows all the relevant facts, all the historical prices, all the hidden costs. But in the real world, perfect information is a complete myth.
Totally.
We are always navigating a world of imperfect, incomplete, or asymmetric information.
Asymmetric information is the really dangerous one. It's when one side of the table holds a secret that the other side doesn't, and they can use that secret as leverage.
Right.
The classic example the source material brings up is the lemons problem. Let's actually walk through this because it explains so much of why the world feels frustrating. Imagine you are walking onto a used car lot. You need a reliable car to get to work.
Okay, let's play this out. You are the buyer, you have cash, and you want a good car. The seller is standing there with a 2018 sedan they want to offload.
Okay, I see it.
Here's the asymmetry. The seller has driven that car for 5 years. They know its deepest, darkest secrets.
Oh, no.
They know that if you drive it over 60 miles an hour for more than 20 minutes, the transmission starts to slip and smell like burning metal.
Oof, that burning smell.
Right. They know there is a weird, untraceable rattle on the dashboard when it's cooled. You, the buyer, know absolutely none of this. You can kick the tires, you can check the paint, you can sit in the driver's seat, but you cannot observe the hidden internal quality of the machine.
Right. I'm totally in the dark. So as a rational player, I have to process that risk. Because I know that I don't know the truth, I have to protect myself.
Exactly.
I have to look at this shiny sedan and assume there's a 50-50 chance it's a lemon. A complete piece of junk that will break down next week. Therefore, I am not going to offer top dollar, even if the car is genuinely a peach. A beautifully maintained, perfect vehicle. I refuse to pay the premium peach price because I have no way to verify it.
You can't trust them.
Exactly. I have to mentally average the price down. I offer a mediocre price to shield myself from the risk of buying a lemon.
And here is where the game theory gets devastating. Watch what happens to the entire architecture of the market when buyers act rationally like that.
Okay, what happens?
The sellers who actually have high-quality peaches hear your mediocre offer, and they are insulted. They know their car is worth $10,000, but you're only offering $7,000 because you're scared.
So they just say no.
Right. The high-quality sellers refuse to sell. They take their excellent cars and go home. They exit the market entirely.
Leaving only the people who are thrilled to take my $7,000.
Exactly. The only people left on the lot are the sellers of the actual lemons. They know their junk car is only worth $3,000, so they happily accept your $7,000 offer.
Wow.
The rational attempt by buyers to protect themselves actually drives all the good products out of the market, leaving only the garbage behind.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Kenny looks at this dynamic and delivers a really profound ethical verdict. He says, bad information architecture creates bad moral architecture.
Yes.
It isn't just a math problem where the market becomes inefficient. It's that the game, by its very physical structure, begins to actively reward deception and punish honesty. The honest seller with the great car is driven into bankruptcy or forced to leave.
Right.
The liar selling the lemon thrives and makes a profit. When truth is expensive or hard to verify, the system mathematically selects for liars.
It is a chilling realization because it applies to so much more than just cars. It applies to online dating, where people misrepresent themselves because it's hard to verify.
Oh, absolutely.
It applies to job interviews, where candidates exaggerate their resumes. If a market structure makes honesty unprofitable, you will eventually run out of honest players. The Jenga tower will be built entirely of hollowed-out blocks.
So how do we fix it? If we are stuck in a system that rewards lying, how do we rebuild the trust?
Kenny's perspective as the system architect is crucial here. He says you cannot just yell at the players to be more moral. You can't just hang a poster in the break room saying integrity is our core value.
Which every company has.
Right.
Yeah.
And that does nothing against structural incentives. You have to build actual infrastructure to force the truth out. This is the concept of costly signaling.
Okay, let's unpack this. Break that down for me. If I am the honest seller with the genuine pooch of a car, I need a way to prove it to the skeptical buyer. I need a signal that the lemon seller absolutely cannot fake.
Precisely. And a signal must be costly to be credible. Talk is incredibly cheap.
Oh, totally.
Anyone, honest or lying, can say, trust me, this car runs like a dream. But offering a comprehensive, legally binding 2-year warranty that covers all parts and labor, that is a costly signal.
Because if the lemon seller tries to fake that signal and offers a warranty, they will go bankrupt.
Exactly.
Their junk car will break down on Tuesday, the buyer will bring it back, and the seller will have to pay for a new transmission. The cost of the signal destroys the liar.
Only the seller of the genuine peach can afford to offer the warranty, because they know the car won't break down. The warranty costs them nothing in reality, but it costs the liar everything.
So a warranty isn't just a nice customer service perk or a marketing gimmick. It is a highly engineered strategic mechanism designed to bridge the information gap. It forces the hidden truth out into the light. And this applies everywhere. Independent inspections, rigorous professional certifications, heavy financial investments in brand reputation. These are all costly signals. They are the physical infrastructure of trust.
And this connects deeply to Kenny's overarching philosophy on maintenance. Trust isn't just a warm, fuzzy emotion you feel toward a friend. Trust is hard economic infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Yes. When a society or a market neglects trust, every single transaction becomes agonizingly expensive. If you don't trust the person you are doing business with, you have to hire 3 lawyers to write an airtight contract.
You have to demand huge upfront deposits.
You have to install surveillance systems to monitor them. Trust makes cooperation cheap and fast. Distrust makes every move incredibly slow and costly.
Okay, so if information is the battlefield where we're trying to figure out who is telling the truth, what actually forces the players onto the battlefield in the first place, why do we even play?
That's the engine room.
Right. The notes point to 2 massive engines driving this whole machine: scarcity and incentives. Let's start with scarcity. If we lived in a Star Trek utopia where we had replicators and infinite mansions and infinite free time, there would be no game theory.
No, we wouldn't need it.
We wouldn't need strategy because we wouldn't have to make choices.
Scarcity is the ultimate pressure test of reality. It is what makes choices costly. It forces players to reveal what they actually care about. Canny has a core insight here. When times are good and resources are abundant, everyone can pretend their values are perfectly aligned. A massive corporation can put out a glossy PR report claiming they value their workers' mental health, the environment, and their shareholders' profits all equally.
Right. It's very easy to be the benevolent, generous boss when revenue is up 200% and money is practically falling from the ceiling.
Exactly. But under pressure, under the brutal scarcity of a sudden recession, a global supply chain collapse, or a massive spike in inflation, the trade-offs become starkly visible. Scarcity forces the choice. You can't have it all anymore.
The mask slips.
Right. Do we protect the workers' jobs, or do we fire 10% of the staff to protect the quarterly profit margins? Do we prioritize buying cheap, immediate materials from a heavily polluting factory, or do we pay a premium for resilient, clean supply chains?
You have to choose.
Scarcity strips away the performative corporate values and reveals the actual load-bearing values of the player. You learn who someone is when they're running out of time or money.
And the engine that converts that scarcity into actual human behavior on a daily basis is the incentive structure. The notes are relentless on this point. Watch what the system pays for. Forget what the system says. Watch what it pays for. That is what it actually believes.
Yes. Always follow the incentive.
We can talk about good incentives versus bad incentives. A good incentive perfectly aligns a person's private, selfish gain with a shared public benefit, like a simple bottle deposit.
Oh, yes. The bottle deposit is a beautifully elegant mechanism.
It really is. You pay an extra 10 cents when you buy a soda. To get your 10 cents back, you have to return the empty bottle to the recycling machine. It takes your selfish desire for 10 cents and leverages it to keep the public park free of litter. It aligns the individual with the commons.
Or consider a carbon tax. A factory naturally wants to pollute because dumping exhaust into the air is free. A carbon price makes that pollution legally costly.
Right.
Suddenly, the factory's private, selfish desire to save money perfectly aligns with the public's desire for clean air. They invest in scrubbers for their smokestacks, not out of the goodness of their hearts, but to avoid the tax. The incentive does the heavy lifting.
But then we have the dark side. Bad incentives. Think about a high-pressure sales floor. The management sets sales quotas that are so mathematically unreasonable that it becomes literally impossible to hit them honestly. What happens?
The system subtly rewards employees for lying.
Exactly. It rewards them for aggressively upselling vulnerable customers on insurance they don't need, or quietly opening accounts without permission.
Or look at the architecture of modern social media platforms. The executives will go on stage and say their goal is to build global community and connect the world.
Sure they do.
But their algorithms, the actual engine of the game, are entirely incentivized to maximize user engagement time so they can serve more ads. And psychologically, what drives engagement better than anything else?
Outrage, anger, fear.
Exactly. The algorithm quickly learns that a nuanced, polite discussion about tax policy keeps a user on the site for 3 minutes. But a highly polarized, inflammatory post that makes the user furious keeps them arguing in the comments for 3 hours.
Right.
The platform mathematically rewards behavior that is actively tearing the social fabric of the real world apart, simply because it keeps eyes glued to the screen. The metric becomes the master.
Wait, the metric becomes the master? I love that phrasing.
It is a crucial failure mode identified in the notes. When you optimize the wrong metric, you don't just measure the system, you manufacture distortion.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if you run a customer service call center and you decide to reward your agents solely based on average handled time, meaning how fast they get the customer off the phone, what do you think will happen?
The agents will start hanging up on people the second the call gets complicated. They will close tickets without actually solving the problem, just to keep their average time under 2 minutes.
Yes. The executives in the boardroom look at the spreadsheet and think, wow, our efficiency is skyrocketing. Call times are down.
While the customers are furious.
Right. In reality, the incentive has engineered terrible, enraging customer service. The metric destroyed the goal.
Okay, but I want to stop and process this because it sounds a bit deterministic. I hear this argument that the incentive made them do it, and I think, well, sure, incentives matter. But aren't some people just bad actors? Can we really blame the abstract incentive structure if a CEO decides to consciously cut safety corners on an airplane assembly line, risking hundreds of lives just to hit a stop price target and get a $20 million bonus? Isn't that just a profound moral failing of that specific CEO? It feels like blaming the game lets the corrupt player completely off the hook.
That is the central tension of game theory applied to ethics.
Yeah.
And Kenny's maintenance logic addresses this directly. He does not absolve the individual of moral responsibility. If you cut corners and hurt people, you are responsible. But, and this is the critical architectural point, he argues that if you design a system that explicitly rewards extraction and massively punishes restraint, and you put highly rational, ambitious agents into that system, you will inevitably manufacture bad outcomes at scale.
So it's about probability, not just individual purity.
Exactly. You can yell at the players all you want. You can fire the corrupt CEO. You can put him in jail. You can hire a brand new, highly ethical CEO to replace them.
Right.
But if the underlying structural rules, the quarterly bonus targets, the Wall Street pressure for short-term growth, the lack of safety oversight, if all of that remains exactly the same, that new CEO will face the exact same immense crushing pressure to cut the exact same safety corners.
Wow.
You cannot rely on the personal heroism or the moral martyrdom of individuals to overcome a toxic, badly designed incentive structure.
Because eventually the ethical person will either break down and comply, or they will be fired and replaced by someone who will.
Precisely. If a system requires people to constantly act against their own economic survival just to do the basic right thing, that system is structurally bankrupt. Kenny's view is that if the game consistently rewards decay, you have to stop yelling at the pieces on the board and you have to redesign the rules.
So let's say the players are dropped into this board. They follow their incentives, they navigate the scarcity, they try to find out who is lying, and they make their moves. Eventually, the whole chaotic system settles down. Everyone finds a strategy that sort of works for them, given what everyone else is doing, and nobody wants to change their move because doing so would hurt them.
Right, the dust settles.
In textbook economics, this state of rest is called a Nash equilibrium. It sounds so peaceful, it sounds like balance, but Kenny flashes a massive red warning sign here.
He does, and this is where his background in maintenance really elevates the theory. Kenny warns that in a complex system, stable does not mean healthy. Stable does not mean fair. And stable certainly does not mean worthy of being maintained. A Nash equilibrium, named after the mathematician John Nash, simply means that no single player can unilaterally improve their own outcome by changing their strategy alone. It is a pattern that holds. That is all it is.
Translate that for me. It just means everyone is stuck, right? We've all made our moves, and if I change my move now, I'll only hurt myself. We are locked in. Give me an example of a terrible but stable equilibrium.
Well, let's look at a modern, low-trust labor equilibrium. Imagine a corporate environment where the employers fundamentally distrust their workforce. They assume the workers are lazy, that they will steal company time, and that they will slack off the second no one is looking.
Okay.
So, to combat this, the employers underpay them and install intense draconian surveillance software on their laptops to monitor every single keystroke and track their mouse movements.
Sounds like a nightmare. I've heard horror stories about that.
It gets worse. Now look at the workers on the other side of that board. Because they are severely underpaid and aggressively, humiliatingly monitored, they feel completely disrespected and alienated from the company's mission. So what is their rational strategic response?
They stop caring.
Exactly. They do the absolute bare minimum required not to get fired. They engage in quiet quitting. They log on at 9:00 a.m., they move the mouse enough to satisfy the tracking software, and they log off at exactly 5:00 p.m., contributing zero extra effort or creativity.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The employers look at the data and say, see, we have to monitor them aggressively because, look, they do the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And the workers look at the software and say, see, we have to do the bare minimum because they treat us like untrustworthy prisoners.
Exactly. Now, let's evaluate this mathematically. Is this a Nash equilibrium? Yes. Absolutely. The pattern holds indefinitely. Nobody has a rational incentive to change their strategy first.
Because if they do, they get crushed.
Right. If one single worker decides to unilaterally break the pattern and work incredibly hard, staying late and offering brilliant new ideas, what happens? They don't get a raise. They just get exploited by the system and burn out. They are punished for changing their move.
And if one middle manager decides to unilaterally remove the tracking software and trust their team, they risk their team slacking off, which makes the manager look bad to the executives above them.
Right. So nobody moves. It is an incredibly stable equilibrium. But is it efficient? No. The company is losing massive amounts of potential innovation. Is it dignified? Absolutely not. It is a miserable, soul-crushing way to spend 40 hours a week.
It makes me think of bad physical posture. You can sit slumped over your desk, staring down at your screen for years. Your body slowly adapts to it. Your chest muscles shorten, your spine curves into a C shape, your neck jets forward. Yeah, you find a physical equilibrium. You aren't actively falling out of your chair. You are stable, but your back is quietly rotting. You are doing long-term, catastrophic structural damage to your discs. It is a stable equilibrium, but it is destroying you.
That is a phenomenal analogy. And that is exactly where Kinney introduces the crucial distinction between equilibrium and alignment.
Okay, what's the difference?
Equilibrium asks a purely descriptive mathematical question. Will this pattern persist? Alignment asks a normative ethical architectural question. Should this pattern persist? Traditional textbook economics often stops at equilibrium. It maps out the stability, proves the math works, and calls it a day. Kinney's lens demands that we evaluate the actual moral architecture of that stability.
I want the listener to really think about their own life right now.
Yeah.
Think about your workplace, your industry, or even a long-term relationship. Are you stuck in a low-trust equilibrium? Are you just doing the minimum because the system around you rewards absolutely nothing more?
It's a hard question to ask.
It really is. Or think about a macro scale, like a destructive corporate price war. Two rival airlines keep aggressively cutting ticket prices to bleed each other out and steal market share. Consumers love it for a minute because flights are artificially cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, to survive the math, the airlines have to slash mechanic salaries, cut maintenance schedules, and cram the seats closer together. It is an equilibrium of mutual systemic destruction.
Which transitions us perfectly into understanding how players actually make their moves to either reach a healthy alignment or break out of a toxic equilibrium.
Let's get into that.
When we look at the actual strategies of play on the board, the two giant categories are competition and cooperation. And what's really nuanced here is that Kinney isn't blindly pro-cooperation or anti-competition. He doesn't view them ideologically. He views them entirely as functional tools.
Right. He evaluates them based on whether they are building the shared system up or tearing it down.
Let's talk about healthy competition first, because we all intuitively know the benefits.
If there are 5 different independent restaurants on your street, they have to fiercely compete for your Friday night dinner budget. They have to keep their kitchens spotlessly clean, their ingredients fresh, their chefs creative, and their prices somewhat reasonable.
Exactly.
If one starts serving terrible, overpriced food, you simply walk next door. That competition disciplines their power. It prevents complacency. It is a healthy stressor on the system.
But competition can very easily mutate and become destructive. When competition happens without structural guardrails, it turns into pure corrosion.
Give me an example.
If heavy manufacturing firms compete not by engineering better products, but by seeing who can secretly dump the most toxic chemical waste into the local river without getting caught in order to save on disposal costs, that is a race to the bottom.
Wow, yeah.
If a massive tech monopoly competes by engaging in predatory pricing, taking billions in losses just to bankrupt a smaller, innovative rival so they can reestablish their monopoly later, that is strategic arson. In those scenarios, the winner isn't the best or most efficient player. The winner is simply the entity most willing to degrade the shared environment.
So what about cooperation? When is teaming up the right strategic move?
Cooperation is absolute essential infrastructure when players share a long-term vulnerable system. Think about risk pools in health insurance. You cannot survive catastrophic medical risk entirely alone,
No.
or creating industry-wide safety standards for electrical wiring, or building public infrastructure like interstate highways, power grids, and lighthouses. You cannot build those things alone, and competing to build them often makes no sense. Cooperation is the tool we use for maintaining the commons.
Well, even cooperation has a dark, twisted side, right? Corrupt cooperation. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. When cooperation turns into collusion, cartel behavior, or exclusion, if the CEOs of 5 rival pharmaceutical companies secretly meet in a hotel room and agree to artificially fix the price of a life-saving drug at 10 times its cost, so they all make massive guaranteed profits without having to compete.
Oh, man.
Right. They are cooperating beautifully with each other. They're a great team, but they are brutally exploiting the rest of the board.
Or when insiders in an industry like a corrupt police department or a tight-knit financial sector protect each other from accountability using a code of silence, they are cooperating to hide the truth.
Exactly.
Kenny has a really strict rule here. Cooperation is good when it maintains the shared commons. It is corrupt when it protects insiders from the consequences of their actions.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the notes point out that even good, healthy cooperation is incredibly fragile. It is so easy to break. It usually falls apart when the burden sharing becomes unequal.
How so?
Imagine a company goes through a really hard financial year. The management gathers everyone in the cafeteria and asks for team cooperation. They ask the workers to take a temporary 10% pay cut to save the company.
Okay, that happens.
The workers agree because they want to cooperate. But then, at the end of the year, the executives still quietly take their massive multi-million-dollar stock bonuses.
Oh, that's infuriating.
Right. That cooperation will fracture immediately into deep, unfixable resentment. The executives pulled a Jenga block from the bottom of the tower to put it on their own stack at the top.
That fracture often happens when players treat a repeated game like a one-shot game, doesn't it? The difference between those two concepts is everything in game theory.
It is everything.
If you are a tourist in a foreign city that you will never visit again and you buy a souvenir from a street vendor, the vendor knows they will likely never ever see you again. That is a one-shot game. The mathematical incentive to overcharge you or to sell you a fake, cheap product is incredibly high because there are zero future consequences.
Right. They just want your money today.
But if I go to my local neighborhood bakery every single Tuesday morning for coffee and a croissant, that is a repeated game. If the baker sells me a stale, moldy croissant to save 50 cents, I will never go back. I will tell my neighbors. I will leave a bad review.
Yeah.
The baker's reputation is their most valuable asset. They are forced to play for the long term.
Exactly. In repeated games, players will routinely sacrifice a short-term, immediate gain in order to preserve long-term trust. This brings us back to the concept of reputation banking. Trust is infrastructure. When a company honors a return policy without interrogating you, or when a contractor comes back to fix a leaky pipe for free because they stand by their work, they are technically losing money on that specific transaction. But strategically, they are depositing immense credibility into their reputation bank account.
Because they know you'll call them again.
Right. They know that trust will drastically lower their transaction costs and bring in more revenue in the future.
So how do you actually build that trust if you are starting from zero? The notes outline some really specific strategies, and I want to role-play one of the most famous ones, tit for tat.
Oh, the classic.
It was made famous in the 1980s by a political scientist named Robert Axelrod, right? He ran a massive computer tournament where different game theory programs played the prisoner's dilemma against each other thousands of times.
Yes, Axelrod's tournaments are legendary. People submitted incredibly complex, devious algorithms that tried to trick, exploit, and backstab the other players. But the program that won the entire tournament, overwhelmingly, was the simplest one submitted.
Really?
Yeah, it was just 4 lines of code called tit for tat.
So what are the rules of tit for tat? Why is it so dominant?
The rules are astonishingly simple. Rule 1. On the very first move, you always cooperate. You extend the olive branch. You trust.
Okay, start nice.
Right. After that first move, Rule 2 kicks in. You just exactly mirror whatever the other player did on their previous turn. If they cooperated with you, you cooperate with them again. If they defected, if they betrayed you or tried to cheat you, you retaliate and punish them immediately on the next move. You hit back.
So it's not a doormat.
Definitely not a doormat.
Yeah.
But And this is the most crucial part. Rule 3. If they return to cooperation after being punished, you forgive them immediately and go back to cooperating.
It's brilliant. It's nice because it never strikes first. It's retaliatory, so it cannot be exploited or used as a doormat. It's forgiving, so it doesn't get locked into a forever war of endless revenge.
Exactly.
And it's clear, meaning the other player can easily figure out the rules and realize that cooperating is their best option.
It is the perfect maintenance strategy. It says, I want to work together to build this tower, but if you pull a block from my side, I will pull one from yours. Betrayal has immediate consequences, but repair is always possible.
There are other strategies mentioned too, like bluffing, saying something like, I have another job offer for $20,000 more, so you need to match it.
Right.
Bluffing is essentially borrowing credibility from your own future. If the boss calls your bluff and says, okay, we can't match it, good luck at the new job, and you don't actually have that offer, your credibility account goes completely bankrupt. You are exposed.
Then there is feigning weakness, hiding your actual strength to lower expectations or avoid provoking a stronger rival. A buyer might pretend they aren't actually that interested in buying a house, pointing out all its flaws, just so the seller doesn't get confident and raise the price.
All of these concepts, signaling, bluffing, tit for tat, the Nash equilibrium, they are fascinating in theory. But I want to take all this high-level architecture and drop it right into the gritty, real-world situations that you, the listener, deal with on a weekly basis. Let's look at the real-world game boards. Let's start with the one that causes the most anxiety: labor negotiations. Getting a job, asking for a salary increase, or a union sitting across the table from a corporation.
This is where game theory gets very practical. When we think about negotiations, we usually picture scenes from movies. We think the person who negotiates best is just the loudest, the most aggressive, or the one who slams their fist on the table.
Right. The alpha.
Right. But game theory completely strips that away. Power in a negotiation has absolutely nothing to do with how badly you want the deal or how confident you act. Power is entirely derived from your outside option.
The BATNA. Best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Exactly. Who has the credible ability to walk away from the table and be fine? That is who holds the power.
Let's role play this. You walk into your boss's office to ask for a 20% raise.
Okay, I sit down, I make my case. I've been working hard, taking on extra projects. I asked for the 20%.
If you have absolutely zero savings in your bank account and there are no other companies hiring in your city, your boss technically holds all the cards. Your BATNA is terrible.
Because I can't leave. Exactly. If the boss says no, you still have to show up on Monday because you need to pay rent. You have no leverage. But if before you walked into that office, you quietly interviewed around and secured 2 other written job offers from competitors for that 20% higher salary, the entire gravity of the room shifts.
Oh, completely.
You aren't asking for a favor. You are presenting a market reality. Your patience is immense because your BATNA is incredibly strong.
So the work of negotiating actually happens weeks before the meeting by building the outside option. But Kenny's verdict on the outcome of these negotiations is really what elevates this. He says that the best labor deal, the optimal play, isn't one where you completely crush the other side and squeeze them for every single drop of value.
No, because if you are an employer and you use your immense leverage to force a desperate worker to accept a humiliating poverty-level wage, you've technically won the negotiation. You maximize your immediate profit.
Because at what cost?
Right. You have destroyed the foundation of the relationship. You have guaranteed that the worker will resent you, they will steal office supplies, they will badmouth you to clients, and they will quit the exact second they get a better option.
You've created that toxic, low-trust equilibrium.
Exactly. Kenny says the best deal is the one that leaves enough dignity on the table to make future cooperation not just possible, but eager.
Let's apply that same lens to the rent negotiation, the classic landlord-tenant game. The landlord holds the physical asset, the housing. In a city with a housing shortage, scarcity gives them immense power.
It does.
But the landlord also faces a very real mathematical risk, which is vacancy. An empty apartment produces zero revenue but still costs some property taxes, maintenance, and mortgage payments every single month. The tenant faces a completely different risk: the massive financial instability and emotional exhaustion of being forced to move.
It is the ultimate scarcity trap. The landlord knows you don't want to pack your boxes. But if the landlord gets greedy and raises the rent too high, pushing the tenant past their absolute breaking point, the tenant will eventually break the lease and leave.
And then what?
Then the landlord has to pay a crew to clean the place, pay a broker to market it, let it sit empty for a month or two, and pray that the next tenant they find isn't a nightmare who destroys the drywall.
So what is the play here for the tenant? Just get angry and threaten to leave.
Anger isn't leverage. A credible alternative is leverage. If a tenant wants to negotiate, they need to bring data to the table. They need to show comparable rents in the neighborhood that are cheaper. They need to remind the landlord of their flawless 3-year on-time payment history and how quietly they treat the property.
So making the landlord realize they have a good thing going.
Exactly. They need to signal that they are willing and financially able to walk away if forced. The optimal move for both parties is usually finding a compromise that prevents the apartment from going empty, recognizing that long-term stability has massive economic value for both sides. It saves the tenant the cost of the U-Haul, and it saves the landlord the cost of the vacancy.
Let's shift to a much broader game board. Public goods. This is the community game. We talked briefly about the bottle deposit earlier, but let's look at things like a community garden, a clean public park, well-funded public schools, or even national defense.
The big stuff.
Right. Everyone wants these things. We all want to breathe clean air. But public goods suffer from a brutal game theory trap called the free rider problem.
It is one of the hardest traps to escape. The definition of a public good is that it is non-excludable. You cannot easily prevent someone from breathing the clean air or walking on the paved sidewalk or enjoying the shade of a tree in the park, regardless of whether they helped pay for it or not.
Because it's open to everyone.
Exactly. Because of that, the strictly rational, selfish incentive for any individual player is to let someone else absorb the cost. The thought process is, I won't donate to the neighborhood park fund. My neighbors will pay for it, the park will get built, and then I will just take my kids there for free.
But the tragedy is, if everyone in the neighborhood acts perfectly rationally according to that selfish logic, nobody donates a dime, the park never gets built, and the whole neighborhood turns into a concrete wasteland. Private rationality completely destroys public responsibility.
Which is where Kenny's focus on maintenance and community really shines. He argues that you cannot just rely on cold, selfish math to maintain a society. The math will tell you to free ride.
Right.
You need cultural norms, shared duty, social shame for bad actors, and sometimes formal government enforcement like taxes to overcome that free rider trap. If everyone happily takes the benefit but nobody maintains the foundation, the Jenga tower collapses.
And that leads us perfectly to one of the most poignant, memorable symbols in all of Kenny's notes. I really want to spend some time on this because it changed how I look at businesses. It's the symbol of the dishwasher.
Yes, the dishwasher is the ultimate avatar of maintenance labor in the Kenny lens.
Okay, picture this. Imagine a bustling, extremely high-end Michelin star restaurant on a Saturday night. Out in the dining room, the lighting is perfect. The executive chef is standing at the pass, plating these beautiful, intricate dishes with tweezers.
Sounds fancy.
Very fancy. The chef gets the magazine covers, the glory, and the massive salary. Out on the floor, the servers are gliding between tables, smiling, charming the guests, and collecting hundreds of dollars in tips every night. They're the visible output of the system. They're the ones the customer interacts with. They get the immediate rewards.
Yeah.
But in the back room, hidden behind swinging doors, sweltering over a steaming sink of murky water, is the dishwasher.
The dishwasher represents the unseen, unglamorous, purely logistical maintenance labor. They aren't creating a new recipe. They aren't selling a bottle of wine. They're just resetting the board so the game can continue.
Right.
But here is the structural reality. If the dishwasher gets fed up and walks out at 7:00 p.m., it absolutely does not matter how brilliant the executive chef is. It doesn't matter how charming the servers are. Within 45 minutes, the kitchen runs out of clean plates.
Oh, wow.
The pans are scorched and unusable. The servers have no silverware to give the guests. The entire multi-million-dollar restaurant grinds to a complete, humiliating halt.
Yep.
The system fails.
Because the entire glamorous operation was entirely dependent on the invisible maintenance layer functioning flawlessly. And Kenny's broader point here is a devastating critique of modern economics.
It really is.
He says that if a corporate system or a whole society only financially rewards the visible output, the flashy CEOs, the aggressive salespeople, the tech founders writing the code, and completely ignores, underpays, or exploits the hidden maintenance labor of the teachers, the nurses, the janitors, the warehouse workers, the actual logistical foundation of society, the back room will eventually collapse. The dishwasher will quit.
And when the back room collapses, the whole glamorous restaurant goes down with it.
Exactly. It is a profound warning about what we structurally choose to value and reward. A society that only rewards extraction and ignores maintenance is building a very tall, very fragile tower.
Which brings us to the final, most advanced section of the notes, the ultimate strategy. We have spent this whole time talking about how to play the game better, how to spot the traps, how to negotiate the leverage, how to build trust. But what happens when you realize the game itself is fundamentally rigged, totally unwinnable, or deeply morally corrosive?
Sometimes, the only winning move is not to play. The notes call this strategy escaping the game. Sometimes the absolute best, most strategic choice you can make is to quit. Leaving a toxic corporate job where the incentives force you to lie to clients. Actively boycotting a tech platform that is extracting your data and destroying your attention span and giving you nothing of value in return. Moving out of a city where the housing market is so broken and captured by monopolies that you can never build equity.
Quitting is often framed as a failure in our culture.
It is, yeah.
But Kenny argues that exit is not a failure when staying in the room requires self-betrayal or participating in a rotting system.
But Kenny doesn't just advocate for running away and hiding in the woods, right? His ultimate evolution in game theory is moving from being just a clever player trying to survive the system to becoming a system shepherd. He enters what he calls the architect mode. In economics, this is a formal field called mechanism design.
Yes.
Okay, we need to break this down clearly. What does mechanism design actually mean? How do you do it?
Mechanism design is essentially reverse engineering the escape room. Instead of looking at a broken market and asking, given these terrible rules, what is the smartest, most ruthless move I can make to win? You elevate your perspective. You ask a completely different question. What rules should we create or change so that when selfish, rational people act naturally, they accidentally produce a healthy, cooperative outcome?
Oh, wow.
You design the board so that doing the right thing is also the most profitable thing.
So what does this all mean? It's like hacking the matrix. Give me an example of how changing a rule fixes a bad behavior.
Let's look at the classic winner's curse in auctions. Imagine a standard auction, what we call a first price auction. We are all bidding on the rights to drill for oil on a piece of land. Nobody knows exactly how much oil is down there. We are all just guessing.
Yeah.
You bid 10 million, I bid 12 million, someone else bids 15 million. The person who bids 15 million wins the auction and pays exactly what they bid. 15 million.
Makes sense. That's how auctions work.
But mathematically, the person who wins the first price auction is almost always the person who drastically overestimated the value of the prize. The winner pays 15 million, but it turns out there's only $8 million of oil in the ground. They won the game, but they went bankrupt doing it.
Oh, I see.
That is the winner's curse. Because players know this curse exists, they become terrified. They start bidding way lower than their true estimates to protect themselves. The whole auction mechanism becomes inefficient and paranoid.
So how does an architect fix that? You can't just tell people, be better at guessing.
Exactly. Yelling at the players fails. The architect changes the rule of the game. They introduce the second price auction, also known as a victory auction. In this game, everyone submits a sealed bid in an envelope. The highest bidder still wins the prize.
Right.
But, and here's the mechanism designing, the winner does not pay what they bid. The winner only pays exactly $1 more than the second highest bid.
Wait, really? Walk me through the logic of that. How does that change my behavior?
If you know you only have to pay the second highest price, your strategy entirely changes. You no longer have to fear overpaying. If you secretly think the oil is worth exactly $12 million, you just write down $12 million. If you win, and the next guy only bid $9 million, you only pay $9,001,001.
Oh, wow.
The rule change completely removes the fear of the winner's curse. It mathematically incentivizes every single player to bid their absolute, true, honest valuation. The architect tweaked one rule about how the price is calculated and instantly transformed a paranoid, deceptive game into a perfectly honest, highly efficient system.
That is incredible. It's shifting the focus from how do I win this broken game to how do I fix the plumbing of this game so everyone wins better. We shouldn't just be aggressively optimizing our own little spreadsheets and trying to crush our coworkers. We need to be architects. If an auction format creates the winner's curse, change the format. If a platform rewards outrage, change the algorithm. If a labor market is trapping workers in abusive jobs because they will lose their family's health insurance if they quit, we decouple health insurance from employment so workers have the structural BATNA to walk away.
Which fundamentally changes the true meaning of optimal play. Game theory often treats winning as a mathematical absolute. But the notes conclude that optimal play depends entirely on your ultimate goal. If your goal is mere short-term extraction and immediate profit, optimal play might mean exploiting a legal loophole, hiding a defect in a used car, or underpaying a desperate worker. You win the turn.
But you lose the long game.
Yes. If your goal is sheer, terrified survival, optimal play means hoarding your resources, trusting no one, and avoiding all risk, which turns your life into a lonely bunker. But if your goal is long-term legacy, which is Kenny's ultimate goal as the logistics architect, optimal play means choosing strategies whose consequences can survive rigorous inspection over time. It means deliberately playing a game that you would be proud to teach to your own children.
A strategy is not a success if it wins the moment but rots the foundation of the tower. We have covered an immense amount of ground today on this deep dive. We have mapped the invisible escape room we all live in. We started from the hidden power dynamics encapsulated inside a single everyday price tag. We explored the brutal battles over asymmetric information and the lemons problem. We looked at how scarcity strips away our performative values and how bad incentives manufacture distortion. We learned the mathematical power of tit for tat, the necessity of building an outside option in negotiations, and the vital, ignored importance of the dishwasher maintaining the whole system.
We've seen that the economy is not some natural, unstoppable force of nature like gravity or the weather. It is a highly specific, designed system of human choices. And because it was designed by humans, it could be redesigned by humans.
Exactly. Every single contract we sign, every wage we accept, and every purchase we make is actively training the system and everyone around us how to behave. And I want to leave you, the listener sitting at the table with us, with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week.
Okay, let's hear it.
Early on, we talked about mapping the board and spotting the hidden players. We talked about how Kenny's architect lens insists on including future generations in the analysis, the people who aren't in the room but will inherit the consequences. Well, consider this. In countless economic games happening around the globe right this very second, in quiet corporate boardrooms discussing massive mergers, in government halls drafting complex environmental regulations, in giant tech headquarters silently updating the algorithms that curate your reality, you are the hidden future player. Your options are currently being constrained, your digital privacy is being traded as a commodity, and your financial risks are being mathematically priced in by people who have never met you and do not know your name. So the next time you feel a sudden, inexplicable squeeze in your wallet, or you notice a frustrating loss of choice in the market, or you are hit with a surge price when you are standing in the rain, remember the invisible escape room, look at the walls, examine the load-bearing beams, and ask yourself, whose game board was I just placed on without my consent? And what specific rule can I change to take my agency back?
That is a phenomenal, powerful question to end on. Thank you for exploring this architecture with us today. It truly changes how you see every interaction.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Look at the world a little differently today. Try to spot the hidden moves being made around you, and we will see you next time.